Two women meet by complete accident and create one of the most influential partnerships in modern literature and art. Their love story would span nearly 4 decades, change the course of American literature, and turn their apartment into the most famous artistic salon in the world. This is the extraordinary true story of Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas, a love that defied convention and shaped an entire generation of artists. Today, we're diving deep into one of history's most fascinating literary love stories. If you're interested in LGBTQ history, modernist literature, or just incredible true stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we explore hidden stories from history every week. Today's story takes us to the heart of early 20th century Paris, where two American women created a partnership that would influence everyone from Pablo Picasso to Ernest Hemingway. But this isn't just a love story. It's the story of how two women built an artistic empire together, challenged societal norms, and left an indelible mark on modern culture. Our story begins not in Paris, but with a natural disaster that would unknowingly set the stage for one of literature's greatest partnerships. In 1906, a massive earthquake devastated the San Francisco Bay Area. The tremors were felt as far as Oakland, California, where significant property damage occurred. Gertrude Stein's parents, living in Paris at the time, owned property in Oakland that was damaged in this earthquake. So they made the journey from Paris to California to assess the damage and handle their affairs. Little did they know, this business trip would set in motion a love story for the ages. In Oakland, the Steins met a 29-year-old woman named Alice Babette Toklas. Alice was captivated by their stories of Parisian life, the art, the culture, the intellectual freedom. The Steins painted such a vivid picture of their bohemian lifestyle in Paris that Alice became determined to experience it herself. This chance encounter, born from an earthquake's destruction, would soon create something beautiful and lasting. Fast forward to 1907. Alice B. Toklas, inspired by those stories of Paris, finally made her move. She packed her bags, left her life in California behind, and sailed to Paris with dreams of intellectual and artistic freedom. When Alice arrived in Paris, she sought out Gertrude Stein at her famous address, 27 Rue de Fleurus. This wasn't just any apartment. It was already becoming known as a gathering place for artists and writers. But nothing could have prepared Alice for what happened when she first laid eyes on Gertrude. Gertrude Stein was 33 years old, 4 years older than Alice, and unlike anyone Alice had ever met. Gertrude was brilliant, eccentric, confident, and completely unconventional. She had short-cropped hair, wore masculine clothing, and possessed an intellectual intensity that was magnetic. According to Alice's own later accounts, it truly was love at first sight. The attraction was immediate and mutual. Here were two American women in Paris, both seeking something different from life, both ready to challenge convention, and they found in each other exactly what they'd been looking for. Within months, Alice had moved in with Gertrude at 27 Rue de Fleurus, beginning a partnership that would last until Gertrude's death 39 years later. Now, let's talk about what made Gertrude Stein such an extraordinary figure. She wasn't just a writer. She was a force of nature in the artistic world. Born into a wealthy family, Gertrude had the financial freedom to pursue her passions without compromise. As a writer, Gertrude was revolutionary. She developed an experimental style that broke every conventional rule of literature. Her famous line, "Rose is a rose is a rose," might sound simple, but it was part of a radical approach to language that influenced generations of writers. But Gertrude was also one of the most important art collectors of her era. She and Alice filled their apartment with works by unknown artists who would later become legends. We're talking about Pablo Picasso, Henri Matisse, Paul Cézanne, artists whose work was considered strange and unmarketable at the time. And where did Alice fit into all this? Alice became Gertrude's everything: secretary, cook, household manager, and biggest supporter. But don't mistake this for a one-sided relationship. Alice was incredibly intelligent in her own right, and her support allowed Gertrude to focus entirely on her creative work. Alice typed all of Gertrude's manuscripts, managed their finances, cooked elaborate meals for their famous guests, and provided the emotional foundation that kept Gertrude grounded. In many ways, Alice was the invisible engine that powered Gertrude's very visible success. Now here's where their story becomes absolutely legendary. Their apartment at 27 Rue de Fleurus became the place to be in Paris if you were an artist or writer. Every Saturday evening, they held a salon, a gathering where creative minds could meet, debate, and share ideas. Picture this. On any given Saturday night, you might find Pablo Picasso discussing his latest painting, Ernest Hemingway reading from his work in progress, F. Scott Fitzgerald debating American literature, and Henry Matisse sketching in the corner. All of this happening in Gertrude and Alice's living room. The apartment was perfectly designed for these gatherings. Gertrude would hold court in the main room, surrounded by their incredible art collection, while Alice would circulate, making sure everyone was comfortable and well fed. Alice had a remarkable memory for people and could make each guest feel special and welcome. Hemingway later wrote about these salons. It was like having a university, but better, because everyone there was already making art, not just studying it. What's important to understand is that this was the early 1900s. Two women living together openly, hosting the artistic elite, collecting revolutionary art. This was scandalous by the standards of the time. But Gertrude and Alice didn't just ignore social conventions. They completely redefined what was possible. Of course, their life wasn't without challenges. As Americans in Paris during World War I, they faced uncertainty and danger. As women in a male-dominated artistic world, they had to fight for recognition. And as a same-sex couple, in an era when such relationships were largely hidden, they navigated constant social scrutiny. During World War I, both women volunteered their services. They drove supply vehicles for the American Fund for French Wounded, showing their commitment not just to their art, but to their adopted home of France. Gertrude's literary reputation grew throughout the 1920s and 1930s. Her experimental style influenced writers like Sherwood Anderson and William Carlos Williams. Her famous autobiography, The Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, which was actually Gertrude's autobiography written from Alice's perspective, became a bestseller. Through it all, Alice remained Gertrude's constant companion. They traveled together, worked together, and built a life that was entirely their own. In an era when women were expected to be dependent on men, they created a partnership of equals that sustained them for nearly 4 decades. When Gertrude died in 1946, she left behind a revolutionary body of work and an art collection worth millions. But perhaps her greatest legacy was proving that love and creativity could flourish outside society's expectations. The Stein Toklas salon model influenced countless other artistic gatherings. Their approach to collecting art, buying work by unknown artists based on vision rather than reputation, became the standard for serious collectors. Their open, loving relationship paved the way for future generations of LGBTQ individuals. Today, their former apartment at 27 Rue de Fleurus is a landmark. Tourists from around the world visit to see where two American women changed the course of modern art and literature. Alice lived until 1967, spending her final years preserving Gertrude's legacy and sharing their story with the world. She once said, "Gertrude always said that paradise is not a place, but a place with a person. For me, paradise was wherever Gertrude was." The story of Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas reminds us that the greatest partnerships in history often come from the most unexpected places. An earthquake in California led to a chance meeting, which led to a love story that would influence modern literature and art for generations.